Hello, my name is Luciano, and for the last 2 years, I've been talking with many of the main actors of the virtual cycling world. I've been exchanging with riders, both elite and community riders, with team managers, event organizers, representatives of institutions, of platforms, hardware experts, software experts, performance verification experts, journalists. And no matter who I exchange with, we all end up with the same conclusion is that virtual cycling is lacking the foundations in order to be a credible sport. And one of the main reasons why it cannot be a credible sport is simply because we don't have the adequate hardware in order to measure the performance. Over the last years, there has been an evolution in the smart trainers. However, we took for granted that the claim of some of the hardware manufacturers that they had a plus or minus 1% accuracy was something good enough for racing, and especially elite racing. And I'm not even talking about all those other smart trainers that are accepted in community racing that have even a more important deviation in accuracy. Because plus or minus 1% means that there's in reality a deviation of 2% possible between a pessimistic smart trainer and an optimistic smart trainer. And I was asking myself, is that really acceptable? What would happen in other sports if we had this 2% variation or deviance? And in reality, when I look at it, in almost any race that happened in any discipline in the Paris Olympics, the winner of the race wouldn't even have been in the podium with that 2% variation. If the mistake in accuracy of the measurement was 2%, most of them, they would have been unnoticed in the race. So why, if in other sports, this 2% is so dramatically important, we accept that it is not impacting our racing in virtual cycling? Because we have additional items that would make the importance of accuracy measurement a lot more important in virtual racing than in other sports. First of all, because in real sports, in physically observable sports, you have a physically observable phenomenon that is happening in front of your eyes that everybody can observe. Everybody's in the same place. So the measurement is only one of the criteria that is allowing you to establish that someone won a race. While in virtual cycling, every single result depends on that original measurement, because afterwards, everything is a calculation of that original measurement that is happening at home, in different locations, in different environments, with different hardware, with different algorithms that are estimating the power. So at the end, this variation that we see is the entire result of what is calculated by the platform. So one thing is that you have already that deviance. The other thing is that the manufacturers have been in a race, nothing more redundant than that, in order to make us believe that the hardware that they are manufacturing is made for racing. So, for example, you have the kicker race mode feature that is trying to make us believe that is making the V6 appropriate for racing. While in reality, this feature, what it does is reporting more repeatedly the same inaccurate measurement. It reports 10 times more the same inaccurate measurement. The same happens with the Justo 2, when they are claiming an unparalleled accuracy, while they're still within that plus or minus 1% that was already there for many of their other smart trainers. And on top, they are not mentioning that the entire hardware is built with the same kind of technology than the previous smart trainers of Elite were already built. So at the end, what we are saying is, what is the impact of that inaccuracy on the elite racing over the past months? And we have one very clear example, is that not only this plus or minus 1% was already not acceptable, but in reality, they cannot even guarantee that plus or minus 1%. the illustration that we had during the Zwift World Series at the end of last year is really exemplary. So from early September, I remember that many elite riders were contacting me, contacting other people that in which we are a lot testing the hardware in order to ensure that there's a fair racing. Everybody was connecting and say, hey, since the virtual shifting has been implemented, we see a lot of more inaccuracy in our dual recording. And I know for a fact that many of these elite riders, they have been exchanging with the hardware manufacturers, both Elite and Wahoo. And very soon, Zwift, after the launch of the Zwift World Series, started to send some recommendations to the riders in order to adapt the way they were using their smart trainers in order for them not to be more inaccurate than this plus or minus 1%. So you see in there some of them, but also the manufacturers, when they started to see that some things were going wrong, not only they have advised that, for example, you use your trainer only at 50% trainer difficulty, but they have been launching some firmwares, allegedly, that were solving the issues. But the riders were being able to assess with the dual recording that it was not the case at all, that the problems were not solved. And the hardware manufacturers were in plain denial. And it's only when Athlete Analytics gave an indisputable evidence of the substantial inaccuracy of the trainers that the hardware manufacturers finally acknowledged the issue. And this is when Zwift, rightly in one of the most courageous decisions that have been taken in the elite racing, have decided to suspend Zwift World Series just because they were not able to determine who was the winner of a race given the inaccuracy of the hardware that they were using. And Zwift at least did something about it. My whoosh apparently at least ignored the problem and decided just to turn a blind eye on it, despite the fact that some engineers of Elite were acknowledging the accuracy issue, and despite the fact that they were writing it to some elite riders. So coincidentally, in the qualifiers for the UCI Worlds, most of the people that qualified to the finals were using those inaccurate smart trainers. Only one of them was using a Tax Neo, but otherwise everybody was using a Justo or a Kicker V6. And the incapacity of the riders to access the raw data of the dual recording with my whoosh, because my whoosh has sent to some of the riders asking to access to their data a screenshot of their duels, but not the raw data that is enabling them to compare really the data to data in order to understand the gap that there is between what the smart trainer was reporting and what the pedals or whatever secondary source was reporting. It's not all. We are not in a situation where everything was marvelous before that. Historically, the hardware was already very vulnerable to physical manipulation. So when we are talking about performance verification, the performance verification exists because of the vulnerability of the hardware also in previous occasions. So you are seeing some examples in there of people not pedaling. You're going to see they stop pedaling and they still generate watts. It's called miscalibration, and everybody knows how to do it. It's very easy. On the left side, you see an incredible physiological phenomenon in which someone increases the power output but decreases his heart rate. And it's someone that has been in the top 10 of the Zwift Power ranking for years. But it's not all. Adding to the historical vulnerability of hardware manipulation, we have seen that there's a proliferation of the ways to intervene in the data stream of the smart trainers. Less than 2 days ago, there was a document published by Bastian Wegener, which is a member of the Fair E-Racing Alliance, in which he explains clearly how you have man-in-the-middle apps that are allowing to replicate the signal or the data stream of any smart trainer, and it's almost undetectable by most of the platforms, be it MyWhoosh, Zwift, Training Peaks Virtual, or whatever. He has been also sharing how you can very easily build a controller and then create like a universal controller for any cycling platform that would be theoretically undetectable. And it creates an environment of suspicion that is affecting everybody. Let me give you an example. Last week, we had one elite rider that during a training session claimed to have generated 970 watts for 1 minute. And it's an incredible performance. Kudos to him. But immediately triggered a conversation about the fact that his hardware was certainly miscalibrated, that there was for sure something that was going wrong. So anyone doing a major performance in virtual cycling is immediately under the scope of scrutiny and creating an immense toxicity between the different stakeholders within the virtual cycling world. And it has nothing but one source of problems. This source is the fact that we don't trust the hardware. We don't trust the accuracy of the hardware that we are using for elite racing or any racing. So the conclusion is very easy. The hardware is simply not appropriate for racing, and the manufacturers need to do something about it. They need to live up to the racing mode promise. Because the current smart trainers, they were not designed for racing. They were originally designed for fitness, for training. So the focus was not accuracy, but the focus was reliability, durability. The power measurement technology that is used there is the power measurement that is depending or analyzing the flywheel behavior. And it's clearly outdated and has a tech ceiling. It's not me saying I don't understand that much about it. I've been discussing with hardware experts and with performance verification experts, and they are telling everybody, no matter how many software patches you put on top of this hardware, you're never going to reach the degree of accuracy that is required for elite racing. It's something that in other industries has been a recipe for catastrophe, for a disaster. And we have seen the same within virtual cycling, with the suspension of Zwift World Series. If you add this to this, the vulnerability to physical manipulation and the vulnerability to right now man in the middle manipulation or intervention, it creates really an environment where we cannot compete fairly. We cannot be understood as a credible sport with this kind of hardware. So what is the solution? And I'm going to quote here the person that I respect the most in all virtual cycling. It's only 2 weeks ago, that he wished that he could see a game and a smart trainer doing the right thing. That he didn't care if it was Zwift, Wahoo, MyWhoosh, or whoever. That as long that we can make data to be true. And for that, it requires two main things. The first one is that we have hardware that is designed from the scratch with the unique objective of performance accuracy. And he was telling me that the tech is there. That, for example, the Tax Neo is already an extremely accurate smart trainer. If you add on top that Garmin within his hardware ecosystem has also Garmin Rally pedals, the combination of the two can make a very, very acceptable, accurate hardware for virtual racing. The same happens with the Wahoo, with the smart trainer and the Speed Play power meter pedals. It means that the tech is there. It just needs to be put together in order to be something acceptable for elite racing. However, it's not only a pure hardware problem. It has to do also with the data stream, with the data encryption, with the transparency of the data stream. Because we need the smart trainers to stream the data that is generated by all their sensors in order to allow the platforms to be able to verify the performance, to understand that what is happening within the smart trainer is the result of an actual physical output from the virtual cyclist that is in the bike. So until we didn't solve these two issues, it's going to be very difficult to trust hardware and to be a credible sport. And I've been already too long about it, so I'm going to stop there. And the next episode, the next chapter, is going to be about how the money that has been poured last year by MyWhoosh into virtual cycling has had a lot of positive impact, but also some negative impact. Thank you very much.